Hello, welcome to Jason Cavness Pitch. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Our guest today is Tom Gurski. Tom, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here and appreciate you giving folks like me a voice.
Yes, yes. So, Tom, you're doing some amazing things, right? You know, like a pretty cool background. Before you get all deep dive on that, what do you do for fun, hobbies, when you're not working?
Mostly I love getting outside, so that looks like a lot of different things, but could be mountain biking, could be backcountry skiing, might be some kiteboarding, basically anything that gets me out in nature and especially enjoying the sunshine when we get it.
So, in your bio, you said you're an outdoorsman. What does that mean? Like, does it mean just like outside barbecuing? Just like, you mean being active, or what does that actually mean?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it can mean a lot of different things, but for me, it mostly means being outside and being active. Working the body a bit, but doing that outside and kind of the more away from the city and in nature and in wilderness, the better.
Does that include like hunting and fishing?
I've done a little bit of fishing. Haven't done any hunting. It's something that I'm interested in, but it just hasn't been a priority for me yet.
Yeah, talk about like Washington State. It's just an amazing place to do outdoor stuff, right?
I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I wound up here. I'm from New England originally, but having some family that moved out this way and visiting some friends out here, really just fell in love with the place and decided that this is where I needed to be.
How long have you been out here?
I've been here about 15 years.
Okay, so I have to ask.
Yeah.
Seahawks or Patriots?
Oh, I think this past year was the first time when I was really totally on the fence. I could have gone either way. I held on to my New England sports allegiances very long time, and I think I probably will always be a Red Sox fan. But between Seahawks and Patriots, at this point, I can kind of go either way.
Yeah, I'm always been a Cowboy fan, but Seahawks are my second team now because it is home team or whatever. So
Sure.
As long as they're not playing the Cowboys, go for Seahawks.
Got it.
So the Red Sox, man, the Red Sox ain't doing too good this year, are they?
I actually haven't been following. Been a little too busy with everything going on.
I think
but
they're in last place right now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad to hear.
Yeah.
It's too bad. It's a great club with storied history.
One of the iconic clubs in baseball, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And a great park too.
So what's your next big outdoor adventure you want to do?
I'd like to lean a little more into overlanding. So I have a van that I've taken on some cross country trips. But I'd like to have kind of steer that more towards the wilderness travel. So might do some kind of Washington or Oregon overlanding trips. Hopefully this summer if time allows.
You do a lot of camping too?
Yeah, definitely a lot of camping. Yep.
Yeah. Nice. I'm guessing I guess you do the real camping. You don't bring the RV out, with the glam camp. You do the real camping, right? I'm guessing.
A bit of a mix. So I'll definitely do some, some backpacking where you're humping your back for 10, 15 miles to get to where you're going to stay. But I've also done some van camping, which is kind of, in between. Definitely not fully on the glamping side of things, though. To me, I'm not quite sure I understand the point of that.
So today, I think it's July 9th, right?
Sounds right.
So you're hosting an event on July 15th at the Seattle Climate Innovation Hub for Founder Summit. It's like, I guess you're hosting some kind of hardware startup session. Can you talk about that? Yeah.
So the Founder Summit, it's a full program. There'll be some great presenters, some great topics covered. And then towards the end of that, in the afternoon, there are a series of breakout sessions with different subtopics, and I'll be leading the breakout session for basically hardware startups and the various challenges that we face that aren't necessarily faced by all startups.
So what do you want someone to get out of attending this? What should they expect from this?
Well, hopefully they'll get a chance to leverage the community as much as possible. That's the main goal. I plan on talking a little bit about how having a structured sort of systems engineering approach / quality management system approach to developing hardware can actually make you more efficient and let you move faster than taking a bit of a wilder approach. We don't have the luxury of iterating as quickly and cheaply as software does. So being able to be a bit more intentional with every step of the process can make you more efficient, even though most people tend to view processes as being the enemy of efficiency. They can actually help you be more efficient if they're done right.
So talk about the process. Like, how do you go about deciding like when to invest in, like, we have product A, we need to do version 8.1, like, but then you just can't like really nearly spend money on it, right? So how do you make sure you have the right time frame, so to speak?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what what stage of the process you're in. Early stages, it's all about de-risking various aspects of the business, and so typically the initial focus is on technology risk, and so that kind of looks different depending on whether you're trying to take something from new science to first of a kind prototype, or established science into first of a kind engineering system, or something that's been established on engineering level but trying to make it commercial for the first time. So you encounter different risks at each stage of those processes, and just a question of identifying them clearly, and then how do you mitigate those risks with the fewest resources and on the fastest timeline possible.
So I know software they do like 2-week sprints, agile, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing you don't do 2-week sprints in hardware, right? Is there something else that you do?
I have not found that to be successful. I've definitely been in organizations or worked with organizations who've tried to push an agile approach into hardware. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely very valuable things you can take from agile and apply to hardware, but it's definitely not a one-for-one match. You can't just take the exact same process and apply it to hardware and expect it to work for you, just because the cycles are longer and the commitment for each stage, each gate is higher. So you have to be more intentional, more thorough.
So we're in Seattle. Seattle's known as a software city. You run a hardware. Can you talk about some of the challenges or some of the cons or maybe pros of being a hardware startup in this environment?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to say it's mostly cons. It's Seattle's a funny place to be a startup. I think just the fact that we have such a strong history of software here can kind of mask some of the shortcomings of the Seattle area for startups in general. But once you get into hardware, those start to rear their ugly heads. And I've had a lot of conversations with folks about where that comes from, and I think the general consensus tends to be that most of the community here that's involved in startups didn't necessarily come up through startups themselves. You have a lot of folks who they might be an angel investor now, but they got their money from doing 30 years at Microsoft, and so they aren't familiar with what the startup cycle looks like, and B, they might not feel as much of a sort of need to pay it forward to contribute back to the system that brought them the success that you might have in like a Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I think that's the big criticism of Seattle investors, right? Like example, like in the Bay Area, so like most of the investors there are former founders. They've had a startup where they were successful or failed. Like you said, most investors here are like former Microsoft, Amazon.
Yeah,
and they've really built nothing, right?
Well, I wouldn't say built nothing, but they've done it in a very different context than a startup. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, let me take that back. They built something with
exactly.
Maybe, not startup. Yeah,
but yeah, when you have a multi-million-dollar budget and health insurance and paid vacation, it's a little bit different than being a scrappy startup. Yeah.
So Seattle Climate Innovation Hub, is that the one by like Laura Knob and it's called like 9Z or something like that?
Yeah, so 9-0 is the kind of the private side of that joint endeavor, and then there are a few more public entities that contribute to that as well.
And you're actually members of that place, right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. How long have you been there?
Coming up on a couple years now.
Is this like a basic incubator? Like, do you have to pay money for it? Like, how does that work for you?
It's a few different things. So it's kind of first and foremost a co-working space. But there's also an incubator that's attached to it, which is the UW Co-Motion Accelerate, a climate tech accelerator, which my startup, Blue Dot Motorworks, participated in the very first cohort, which was last year. And then there's, I believe, the Seattle Chamber of Commerce. Please, someone correct me if I'm wrong. Is a sort of a co-sponsor of the hub, and I think Virtue Lab as well.
So I know some people would say like they prefer to work by themselves for their team because you can be focused. Other people would say, no, I want to work with like co-working space, other people around, like get ideas. Like, so how has co-working space worked better for you versus like you being your own like dedicated space?
I mean, it's great for maintaining sanity. I got a bit of a jump on working from home compared to folks who encountered it for the first time in COVID, in that I started my own engineering and product development consultancy back in 2014. And in the early days of that, it was just me. And I went into it viewing myself as maybe a bit of a lone wolf and thinking I would thrive in that environment. But as soon as I was in it, I hated it. I realized that I might be a little on the quiet side at times, but I'm definitely an extrovert in the sense that I am energized by other people. And so it was a tough adjustment, figuring out how to be effective, how to be happy doing that. And so being able to now have a co-working space where I can, a couple times a week, go in and have particularly like-minded people around you, all sort of mission-driven and working towards the same goal, is incredibly energizing.
Yeah, I'm kind of sort of the same way. Like I like being around a lot of people, but I guess you don't want to talk to anyone, right?
Yeah.
Sense, right.
Yeah, I can fall into that mode. Yeah, I like having people around and being able to opt into to the interactions. But not having the option of interacting is really stifling. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so what do you want to get out of hosting this event next week? What's the value that you want to get out of it?
Well, I'm really hoping that we can start to build more of a hardware-centric community, particularly in climate in Seattle. So sort of laying the foundation for that. The other thing that's happening next week that I'm a part of is a cluster as a part of 9.0 has recently been started by my colleague Marty Silber, and he and I are now the co-chairs of that cluster. It's a transportation cluster, so we're having an event next week as part of Climate Week. That's a transportation panel. So we've got some really impressive folks, heavy hitters from various public and private organizations in the area. And so really just hoping to start build both the transportation communities and the hardware communities, particularly centered around climate in this area, because we've definitely been lacking that up until now.
So Climate Week, I'm guessing that's a once a year thing here?
What is?
Like Climate Week, that's like once a year thing?
The
Climate Week.
Oh, Climate Week. I'm sorry. Yes, Climate Week is once a year. It's in the summer every year. It's grown exponentially. I think the first one was 3 years ago, and there were just kind of a handful of events, and now it's a the full-blown organization stood up around it, and now you have to be selective about what events you don't want to go to, because there's multiple overlapping events that are all fantastic. So it's just great to see. And really the climate scene has just exploded here in the past few years. 2-3 years ago it was kind of crickets. You might have one or two climate-centric events a quarter, and now there's one or two a week throughout the year. So it's really grown a lot.
So it says PNW Climate Week. So I'm guessing there's other cities by Seattle taking part in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, all the way up to Vancouver, all the way down to Portland, and maybe even further south. Yeah.
Okay. Are you doing anything else? Is there anything else going during Climate Week besides your event that people should know about?
I mean, my two events are definitely, I think, going to be great. The transportation panel and the Founders Summit. But I think I'm attending easily a dozen events across the week. So check out the website. See what resonates with you.
So how do you go about picking events that be the most valuable to you?
Well, so unfortunately, I can't just go to the ones that I find the most interesting. I have to primarily go to the ones that fit the near-term needs of Blue Dot as much as possible. And so that tends to be these days a bit more focused on the capital side of things. So I'm going to probably 3 or 4 events specifically around climate capital and fundraising for startups. And then sort of beyond that, I start to kind of put on the transportation filter, what's more closely related to the actual work that Blue Dot does. And then the sort of last tier is, okay, what's just personally interesting to me? I love learning about fusion, even though that's completely irrelevant to my business. But if I can attend a fusion event, I'm going to, yeah.
See, so a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, you went to something called Tata Motors. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? Yeah,
so Tata is a extremely big Indian motor vehicle manufacturer, and as well as several other associated industries. They're actually the largest EV manufacturer in India, and I think globally they're somewhere around the sort of Toyota, Subaru size of vehicle manufacturer. My alma mater, MIT, hosted a curated event where they tried to pair MIT-affiliated startups with Tata. So it was essentially an opt-in type arrangement where Tata could review all the applicants and say, all right, we want to meet with this company, that company. and talk about how we could potentially work together. So I went back to MIT for that event. Got to meet with some fairly heavy hitters in their commercial vehicle space, and identified, threw some ideas out about how we could potentially collaborate either on technology development or market exploration or whatnot. And it's still a little early to see what's going to come out of that, but certainly validating to have the interest of such a big global player. But we'll see how it actually pans out.
Yeah. So this is my personal opinion, right? So you graduated from MIT, right? Mm-hmm. And this is my personal opinion. People can agree or disagree. Like in my mind, like people say I have a degree from Harvard or Yale. Fair, you're smart, whatever, but maybe your legacy, maybe you paid money to get there, right? But I think most people say if you got a degree from MIT, like you're pretty fucking smart. Like no dummies getting to MIT or there's all types everywhere at the end of the day. I think there's an element of truth to what you're saying, and that MIT has always very proudly been, what do they say? You think MIT, you think top-notch engineering, top-notch science.
Yeah. And they're very...
Jason got to MIT because his granddad gave it to me.
Right. They've always been very vocally and very proudly anti-legacy. Yeah.
Harvard, Yale, those other Ivy League schools, like kind of known for like, okay.
I'll let you say that. Yeah. But the other thing that MIT does that's great is that they are completely needs blind on emissions. And merit blind on financial aid. So you never get a scholarship for being a hot shot, either in academics or sports. And then being less advantaged is not going to hold you back on emissions.
And of course, every college says they have the best alumni program, but it's like MIT really does have one of the best alumni programs out there.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, I'd say. Okay. I think we don't do networking nearly as well as a lot of alumni groups do, and you could probably chalk that up to just sort of the engineering personality is maybe a little less socially inclined than some other schools tend to attract. I have a lot of friends here who came through Dartmouth, and for them, networking it's the school sport. They're phenomenal at it. It's all they do. And I've been a little disappointed in the lack of networking opportunities as an MIT alum. And then a little bit disappointed in the lack of startup support through the MIT, being affiliated with MIT. They do a really good job at pairing startups with industrial players for sort of strategic collaboration. That's how the Tata event came about. But at the end of the day, what do startups mostly need? We need some money. And unfortunately, MIT does not do a great job at helping startups with that aspect of starting a business.
Okay. So like you said, most engineers are kind of introverted. They're don't play the networking game. But as the CEO of your company, you got to play the networking game, right?
For sure. Yep.
How have you been able to kind of transfer from the engineering mentality to putting yourself out there?
Yeah. Well, for me, and I definitely neglected networking early in my career. And it wasn't for lack of being social. I mean, I've always been a very social person. It was more. It just kind of gave me the ick, and it felt sort of transactional in nature, and that sort of turned me off from it. The attitude shift that I had that really helped me lean into it was to really approach it with the attitude of I'm going to make sure that I'm always giving more than I'm getting out of this process. And sometimes early in your career, you feel like maybe I don't have that much to contribute. But as you go through the ringer a few times, you start to realize, all right, I've actually got some lessons I can share. And so going in, being willing to, commit not just the energy to doing the networking, but the follow up, and really being willing to sit down with people and offer your advice, your experience. It kind of changes the mindset of that transactional nature.
So that's one thing. Myself included, I think most of us kind of suck a follow up, right? So what's your advice on making sure you follow up with people?
Probably the biggest thing I do is I try to do something in the moment. So, if I'm talking to somebody and I'm thinking, oh man, you should really talk to this other person. I can't help you, but I know this other person that can. I'll take the time right there to do the LinkedIn forward the profile to the other person and ask for the opt-in right then and there. I think Seattle's sort of famous for the freeze and the lack of follow-up and people being a bit flaky. And it's an easy trap to fall into. So I try to just take the momentum and get it done right away. Obviously, sometimes you can't always do that. But it's also, I tend to sort of reserve part of my day to those kinds of activities. Carve out some time, particularly kind of later in the day when maybe I don't want to be spinning CAD at 9 o'clock at night, but I feel a little more inclined to send some intro emails, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Another thing, I know there's the Seattle freeze here, but there's something else too, like, I don't know what it's called, but maybe it just happens to me, like, I'll communicate with people, like, do stuff for them, we're going back and forth, and then I send a message, crickets. Then before you know it, they haven't answered anything too much, right? So almost like, is that me personally, or they're ghosting people? Like, yeah.
No, that's definitely not you. There's a lot of that goes around. I think in general, Seattleites we're very friendly and outgoing. Once we're in a social context, but then we tend to, once that kind of spotlight's off, we tend to revert to a more introverted mindset.
Yes, I mean, at least tell me you're not interested in talking to me no more. Just just freaking crickets, right? Like, damn. Like, did I do something to offend you? Like, I do something wrong, like.
And I think it's rarely that. I think it's people just they get involved in their own head, in their own circle, and then when they're not in that social situation, they tend to not be thinking socially.
Yeah, you just don't know. You can't take it personal, right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like fundraising. If you take every no personally, you'd go crazy.
Yeah, fucking mental case.
Yeah.
Next, talk about this. There's something called Stirling engine generators that you developed.
Oh yeah, that was the first job I had out of college. I was very lucky to land. My advisor at MIT, he told me that I should either go to grad school or go work for this weird little company up in New Hampshire. And I decided to go that route. And so I approached them, got an interview, got the job. So the company was Deca Research and Development. The founder is Dean Kamen, who sort of came to fame initially in the sort of medical device world, and the company developed the iBot robotic wheelchair, which is this wheelchair that can balance on two wheels and climb stairs, and got a bit of press attention. And then it really blew up. I guess must have been around 2004 or something, somewhere in that ballpark, when the Segway scooter came out, and all the media buzz around that. But it was particularly working on the Stirling engine project, just about the best way to cut your teeth as an engineer. It's like drinking from a fire hose from a technical perspective. You've got machine design, you've got mechatronics, high temperature, high speeds, high pressure, structural engineering. It's like just everything that you studied as an undergrad all rolled into one type of system. So we were, and then the nice thing is you can feel good about it. It was trying to fill a niche in the clean energy space. I think it's struggled to find an application where it really makes the most sense. But being able to run clean and quiet is certainly something you can enjoy working on and feel good about. But really, from an engineering perspective, you couldn't have asked for a better project to kind of come up to speed as a real world engineer.
I don't know. I think sometimes Segway might be the best example of a company that had everything going for it, but still failed, right? Because they had funding, you saw them everyone on the TV, ride the Segway, be cool, and then something just like that, just like they failed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert on how that failed, but I think part of the problem is that it failed to be cool, and it also came out of the door very expensive, and I think this might be a case of if you're a John Doerr, the idea that somebody would spend, I think it was $6,000 at the time, on something like that. It's like, sure, why wouldn't somebody spend $6,000 on something like that? And then, but to a real person, $6,000 is a lot of money to spend on something like that.
Yeah, most people $6,000. That's like, man, that's the monthly budget.
Yeah, easily, for sure. So, and then I think there may have been a bit of a lack of commitment in terms of because I think there was potential to get the price down lower with scale and volume. but they didn't make the commitment to the high volume production early enough to get the price down. And obviously, that would have been incredibly expensive to do. Yeah. But if they had come out of the door, with the producing hundreds of thousands of units, then maybe the price would have been low enough to actually catch on.
Yeah, startups is hard, right? Like people don't realize, like I think we've all seen, we've seen a startup. Man, I'll say something. Had the perfect team, to have funding, everything's going on. They have like blah blah blah, and then like they get to do a press release. We're shutting it down, right?
Yeah.
And they have another startup, like, man, their team it doesn't seem like the team's the best, they're struggling, and then boom, they're like making it, right? It's like no rhyme or reason to it, I think.
Yeah, and obviously there are tons of reasons why that might be the case. I think the ones that I see most frequently, at least on the sort of, let's just say, kind of climate hardware space, is where the state of the science doesn't support a unit economics that works out. So we're making an X that does Y to sell to Z might sound amazing. But when you look at how much it's going to cost to sell X to Y, and what the alternatives are to Y, I think that's where a lot of startups fall short. So,
2-part question. First part, what age were you like kind of got interested in engineering? Second part, what age were you like, you know what? This is going to be my career. I'm going to be an engineer for life.
That's a good question. I definitely knew that from, as long as I can remember, being a kid, that I was going to be heading in a STEM direction. Just always loved science, always loved tinkering, taking stuff apart, working on things. Started taking my bike apart when I was probably 6 or 8 or something like that. Started got into RC cars when I was 8 or 10. Bought a car when I was in high school and did an engine swap. Like I was just that's the kind of kid I was. I think I was a bit torn, probably through high school, on whether it would be more science or more engineering. When I got to MIT, I was probably only 60-40 convinced to go into mechanical engineering, and the other 40 would have been probably physics. Absolutely loved every physics class I ever took. Would read physics books on my own as a kid. So that was a real possibility for me. I think ultimately engineering felt like a better outlet for creativity. And that's, I think, why I ultimately went that direction.
So when you bring on engineers or work for you at your company, right, what are you looking for in an engineer? Like a certain characteristic trait? Like they be curious? Like what kind of stuff do you look for when you hire people, when you hire engineers?
Yeah. At this stage, we have the luxury that we can only focus on people that are fully mission aligned. When you're a giant company, sometimes you need to hire paycheck people. That's just unavoidable. But at this stage, we can definitely focus on folks who are fully mission aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. Probably the second most important factor for me is adaptability. At the end of the day, we're really trying to do something that's never been done before, and we don't know what challenges we're going to encounter along the way. So I'd rather have somebody that has demonstrated that they can thrive working on multiple technologies in different market spaces under different company conditions than somebody who, did 40 years at Ford and knows exactly how to, design some certain part of a vehicle. But that's not necessarily the environment that we're going to be in.
So let's suppose that someone's out there, they're high school, college, whatever, and they're like 50 going to engineering, right? What advice do you give them to make that decision, whether to be an engineer or not to be an engineer?
Well, that's a good question. And then, of course, AI throws another wrench in that in terms of just how safe is that career moving forward. And I think there's a spectrum there for sure where, more on if you're just going to be a straight up coder, that you should be feeling very threatened. If you're going to be, a civil engineer, maybe you're less threatened. So that's certainly an aspect of it. The good news about engineering is that it can be a fairly lucrative career, but it is also something that you can still be passionate about. So if those two things align for you, then absolutely go for it. I'm not entirely sure that I would say you should just 100% follow your your passion for how you choose your career. Not everybody has the luxury of working on what they're passionate about. And to be fair, like working on something from 9 to 5 every day can actually suck the joy out of something that you maybe were previously passionate about. It's an easy trap to fall into. So you have to take a mix of heart-based and brain-based decision making, I'd say.
So you were to MIT, obviously one of the top engineering schools, probably in the world, right? But does the engineering school you go to actually matter? Like, does the MIT degree really out-trump one from like University of Texas or North Dakota State that much?
I would say it has a lot less to do with how good of an engineer you'll wind up being, and more to do with how many doors does it open, or how wide does it open those doors. Some of the absolute best engineers that I've ever worked with have gone to like not what you would consider top tier engineering schools. And in fact, I would say that the education that I got at MIT was maybe not as great as the reputation of the school would lead you to believe. You tend to get a lot of professors who are super big shots in their field, but that might be research centric, and maybe they're not the best teachers. Whereas you might get some people who are more passionate about teaching at some different schools. Not to say that I didn't have some amazing professors. I absolutely did, but I definitely had some who the teaching aspect of it was a chore and not why they were there. Yeah.
So next, talk about this thing called, I think you said Carbine Enterprises, something else you did?
Yeah, so that was an engineering and product development consultancy that I founded, started back in 2014. When I found myself laid off in 2014, rather than just kind of go look for another job, I said, I'm going to try to give the freelance thing a bit of a whirl. And part of the reason I did that was I knew it had at least the potential to give me the flexibility to work on something in parallel that could ultimately spin out as a startup. And so that was how in the very early days of Blue Dot, it was essentially a side project that I worked on when the consulting was light. So at our peak, we probably had 5 folks working at Carbine. We served everything from garage startups to Fortune 150 companies, but all on sort of that front end of product development. You've got an idea for a product, or there's a new science or a new technology. How do we turn that into an actual product? And that was our sweet spot.
So how long have you been working on Blue Dot Motorworks?
Playing with the idea as far back as 2014. It didn't become a full-time endeavor for me till sort of COVID-ish. I didn't incorporate the company until 2021. Okay. But I built my first scale prototype in 2015.
Okay. So what's something like when you started Blue Dot Motorworks for like right now you're like, man, this is so easy. But you're like, it was like kind of kick your ass, right? Like, man. But now you're like, man, how was this so hard for me? It's the simplest thing ever. But back then it kind of like, kicked you in the butt, so to speak.
Oh boy, that's a good question. I would say spending my own money. Oh man, when I first committed to building the first full scale prototype, it was a mind job to say, I'm going to spend, I think it was probably, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000. But it's like, this is my own money I'm laying on the line.
Yes.
It felt super weird and terrifying and scary. I grew up in an extreme scarcity mindset. And so not squirreling away that money and putting it out there in a way that, essentially just, a prototype is, it's a stepping stone. It's once you're done with it, it's evaporated, and that's no longer worth anything. So you're essentially, I don't want to say throwing the money away because it's super valuable. You have to do it, but that intrinsic value is gone, and that was a difficult thing to do for somebody who came from a scarcity mindset. And if you had told me back then that I would ultimately have spent what I've spent to date, I would have said, you're effing crazy. There's no way I would ever consider that. But now, this many years later, I've spent, more than 10 times that amount of money, and it gets easier over time. It's always painful, but it does get easier over time.
So talk about this. I think this is what a lot of time first time founders don't get right. Like, so I don't know if you're married or not.
I am.
So like a lot of founders, they start coming in right, but like they don't realize like, you know, like if your spouse doesn't support you, your friends don't support you. Like things change, right? Like you can't go hang out with the buddies playing softball every day, right? There's less time, right? And I think a lot of founders like don't take it into consideration, right? Like, hey, you know, hey, the boys, the girls, we can't play pool every night anymore, or you really can't be, you know, there for your spouse all the time, right? Because it's all in for your startup, right? And I think a lot of people don't consider that.
For sure. I try to take a marathon rather than sprint approach. And so, you know, I try to keep an active social life, an active physical and activity life going. But you do have to be much more intentional about what you're willing to cut out. And you know, I'm never gonna cut out friends and family. I'm never gonna cut out keeping myself healthy physically. But you know, there are definitely things I'd be doing differently if I had a 9-to-5. Or there are things I would have in my life that if I was doing a 9-to-5 that I don't now. That I miss not having those opportunities for sure. But you know, on balance, you know, these opportunities to live your values is more important.
Yeah. So how do you do this, right? Like some people will say, you know, like work all the time. Like, and of course, like some people like get burned out. Some people don't. Like how you do where like, okay, you're kind of burnt out. You're tired as fuck. But man, you like, you know, you need to push through a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And other times, you know what? I need to like slow down. Like how do you decide like when to push through? When like, okay, maybe I do need to take a break.
That's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of that's external. It's what's going on at the moment, and can I afford to step back for a week and recharge the batteries a bit, or do I have to knuckle down and power through? And unfortunately, you don't really have the luxury of deciding what situation you're in at any given time. But so I think you have to be able to do both. You have to be willing to opportunistically recharge your batteries, but also able to power through when you have to, because sometimes you just have to. You know, there might be a month where you're, you know, putting in 60-hour weeks and there's no avoiding it.
Then how about this, right? This one mistake I made when I had my startup, right? Like a lot of founders, I think we gain momentum, we're going, and then it's like just like that. We're like, damn, what happened? Like, you know, like the momentum like disappears, right? Yeah,
the momentum's a tough one. There have definitely been times when, you know, just multiple opportunities present themselves in rapid succession, and you feel like, all right, we're off to the races. This is, you know, we're everything's going to fall into place, and we're going to have everything we need to hit our next, you know, major milestone. And then there are times when it's just crickets. It's like, man, why is nothing happening?
Like,
yeah, exactly. And it can be a light switch. And I think. It's just, you know, I mentioned adaptability being something we value highly, and I think you have to be adaptable yourself. You have to be able to thrive in both of those, or maybe not thrive. You have to be able to thrive when things are coming hot and heavy, and then you have to be able to survive when things are a bit more sparse.
So your buyer says change the world. Define changing the world.
So for us and for me, it's. So climate change for us and for me is primarily about the impact it's going to have on future humans. I recently came across something called the 1,000-ton rule, which basically has there's huge error bars around it, super assumptions dependent, but it basically says. You know, for every 1,000 tons of carbon emitted into the atmosphere, this is the number of human lives that are going to be lost due to all the various factors that we know climate change is going to cause. So, you know, sea level rise, crop failure, dislocation, all those factors rolled in. And, you know, for me, climate change has always been primarily about that. It's how is it going to affect humans and the most vulnerable people in the future, and actually the present. We're already seeing those effects now, but the worst of it's going to come in the future. And I think that got put into laser focus for me in the previous line of work I was involved in, which was what I call global sanitation. So I was involved in a number of projects over a number of years around how do we improve sanitation around human waste in the poorest communities in the world. So that's largely kind of peri-urban slums, informal settlements, where if people are lucky, they have a pit latrine. If they're not, they have a plastic bag. And how do you when that pit latrine becomes full and becomes useless, how do you empty it? How do you process the material? How do you do that in a way that's safe, ecological, and most importantly, to actually have a product be successful cost effectively, which is, I think, the component that too often gets missed when you have philanthropically motivated projects. So like it's got to be cost effective if it's gonna have a market. But as part of that work, I got exposure to some of the worst poverty in the world. I got to go to peri-urban slums in Africa, in India, and the thing that really struck me was just how marginal basic existence is for literally 1 to 2 billion people in the world. You throw in one additional stressor, like a food scarcity or water scarcity or a mass migration, and billions of lives are at risk.
Yeah, I said some podcasts before, like people in America who are like, of course, just like poor people in America, homeless people, like in general, like most people in the world are way poorer than our people, right? Like you say, you've seen just two people, like I was in the military, I was in different places, like man, like sleeping on like dirt floors, like not knowing when their meal comes, right? I mean, obviously, if you're poor in America, maybe you don't have a steak every day, but you have a room and board, you have TV, right? Like most people in America have no idea what poor really is, right? And another thing too, like I think a lot of Americans criticize other countries, right? Oh, you're using coal, using wood to heat. Like, I mean, what do you want them to do, right? You want them to fucking freeze to death?
Yeah.
Of course they're going to use coal. They're going to use wood,
No, exactly. And that's why, the fully industrialized nations, like we have to bear the bulk of the burden of addressing climate change. We're the ones that caused the problem in the first place. We're the ones with the resources to fix it. And we're the ones with the privilege to absorb the penalty of taking action.
Let me ask you this, right? Hopefully ask you this question, right? So it sounds like a lot of people in Western civilizations have all these grand climate ideas, right? Reduce emissions, reduce that. But then it comes like China, India, Asia, like they're still like burning like CO2 like crazy, right? And so it's still affecting us. So do we need
yes and no. I mean, China is doing far more than we are to decarbonize their economy.
I didn't know that. Okay.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean they're building solar plants like crazy. They're building nuclear plants like crazy. They're still very heavily reliant on coal, which is unfortunate, but that's a legacy thing. That's how they had to lift their population out of poverty and gentrify their population. But it's India's in. I think they're doing. I can't necessarily say they're doing more than we are, but they're certainly doing more relative to their resources than we are, for sure. I think. But those are also, China and India are very large economies. Once you get into parts of Africa, parts of Southeast Asia, then sure, no, there's not much attention being put towards decarbonizing. But you're talking about economies that have very few resources to put towards that, and when you're trying to literally lift people out of poverty, like you got to make the most cost-effective decisions possible, and we're not at the point yet where that's always going to be the green solution.
Yeah, one thing I don't think is how we have like some climate people like almost like they're talking down to people, right? Like, oh, you're burning coal, so you're the worst person ever. You're doing this, right? I don't really think that's helpful. I think more like you said, like like give people options. Like, okay, you're burning coal, but how do we like take you off coal versus you're the worst. You're human scum,
Yeah, we obviously have to be careful because it's a super politicized issue. Obviously, here in the United States, it's it falls largely along party lines, which is it's just ridiculous that that's where we've landed, where something with that should be a scientific certainty and scientific basis has become politicized to the point where you have climate deniers still, and I think it's very easy to vilify the individuals that might fall into that camp of climate denial, but there's been a very well-oiled, very well-funded machine that's been operating for decades that has resulted in individuals feeling that way. And so I think we have to, maintain a little grace for the individuals and recognize the systemic issues that have gotten us here.
What would you tell people who say, okay, climate change may be real or may not be real, but it's just a cycle, right? Like every 100 years, this cycle changes,
Well, for sure, we can acknowledge that there have been climate cycles throughout Earth's history, but it's the rate of change that we're experiencing now is completely unprecedented, and the man-made fingerprints are all over it. It's there's certain signatures that increasing CO2 in the atmosphere would cause, if that was the thing causing the temperature rises that we're seeing, that we do see things like, and this is not my area of expertise, but there are things like where the temperature inversion happens in the atmosphere, but I believe between, I think it's the troposphere and the stratosphere. If it was a solar change, you wouldn't see this particular phenomenon, but we do see that particular phenomenon, so we know that it has to come from CO2 in the atmosphere.
You just see all the glaciers disappearing, right?
The evidence. I think nobody at this point can deny that the world is heating up.
Yeah.
I think the only bastion left is that it's not human cause. It's not the CO2 we're putting in the atmosphere isn't the cause. But the scientific consensus around that being
is there
issues.
some kind of scientific report that correlates the start of cars with all this stuff going on? Like a car got invented and whatever year was, CO2 came in, and as more cars got made, more CO2, and that's what all this started? Or is this backdated pre-cars, the 1500s to 1700s?
Yeah, it goes further back than that. You first start seeing the uptick. And the correlation between the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere and the temperature rise we've seen it's super tight. It's essentially a 1-for-1 relationship. So that goes back to the Industrial Revolution when we started burning coal. There was a big inflection point after World War II when the United States the level of industrialization went cuckoo bananas compared to anything that happened before. And so part of that is cars. Cars became a huge part of American life. The interstate highway system was built. And so carbon emissions skyrocketed after World War II. And we do see that in the data. You see an uptick in both CO2 concentration and global temperature. And it was a upward curving curve until very, very recently. And a lot of that's due to more and more of the world has been gentrifying, living a high energy, high carbon life. And then only very recently that we're starting to see that curve. It's not falling yet, really, but it's at least leveling off, and that's entirely due to clean technologies.
Yeah, another pet peeve of mine too is you'll see people out there, and they have good intentions. They're pro climate, pro whatever, and they're get rid of this, get rid of that, but then they're on their iPhone, they're driving a car, right? It's okay, and of course you can't totally get rid of all that stuff, right? Another thing too, I don't think anyone, or hopefully no one wants to go back where there's no electricity, no warm water, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do you really want to go back to 1700s? No showers or nothing, right? How far do you want to go back in time, so to speak, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think part of the problem is that I think the general population doesn't have a great sense for what aspects of their life are contributing most to carbon emissions. That's just lack of education on the subject out there. A lot of people choosing to be willfully ignorant about that for sure is a problem. At the end of the day, I don't think we can just rely on individuals making better, lower carbon decisions to get us out of this problem. Too many systems in our society are built around a high carbon backbone, that the amount of sacrifices you have to have somebody make to operate outside of the norms of society and the norms of our systems are too great for that to be the solution. I love a bottom up approach as much as anybody, but we're not going to get there if we don't have a top down approach from governmental leadership.
Let me ask you this. So I think most Asian people in the world were like, okay, like they want clean air, they want clean water, they want clean food, right? But beyond that, they kind of really don't care, right? It makes sense. Like, okay, there's pollution. There's always been pollution. There's CO2. What can I really do about it? Mm-hmm. But so these people, how do you convince them? Like, no, this is a real problem. Like, you need to become involved in this.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately it's human nature. Our empathy decreases the further we get away from our own body, and the further we get into the future. It's easy to feel empathy for somebody in your family. It's easy for somebody in your community. Somebody in another community, somebody who doesn't look like you, somebody that's going to be born 20 years from now. The further away you get from yourself, the harder it is to feel empathy for that person. But it just comes down to values. Do you value the life and well-being of that person that's going to be born 20 years from now into a world that is going to be a lot more difficult for them than it is today, especially if they're in a disadvantaged geography or situation. And so, for me, I think the best conversations I've had with conservative folks or whatnot have been when I've focused on the human impact of it. I think it's too easy to dismiss. Why do I care if the amount of rainforest gets cut in half? Why do I care if an endangered species goes extinct? Like, extinction is a natural part of the Earth cycle. Like, but if somebody's going to claim I don't care about the life and well-being of a person that is either somewhere else or hasn't been born yet, that kind of puts in stark relief, I think, a problem.
So I think most people would say, even those who are like anti-climate, like coal is not good, right? But having said that, is there like a energy that is good for the climate? Yeah,
lots of energies are good. I mean, nothing's without its downsides. Wind, solar, nuclear, I think, are going to need to be the backbone of our energy supply.
Yeah. I don't know if people realize how safe nuclear is. Now, obviously, when nuclear goes bad, it goes fucking bad, of course, but there's like micro-nuclear plants everywhere now. People don't realize that.
There's 90 some odd active reactors in the United States right now. It's been supplying 20% of our electricity, for decades.
99.5% of Americans don't realize that.
Yeah, for sure. And actually on a safety basis, it's, and you have to normalize everything by the amount of energy it produces, right? So per whatever metric you want to use, kilowatt hour of electricity, nuclear is safer than wind.
Yeah.
If you take Chernobyl out of it, which I think anybody who knows anything.
Worst scenario.
Yeah, but it was also a total outlier. If you take that out of it, it's actually safer than solar, and that's because you just get so much power, so much energy out of a nuclear plant. And no industry is 100% safe. No. People fall off of wind turbines. People get hurt in solar deployments. And sure, people get hurt in nuclear as well, but you're spreading that across so much energy and with so little material usage, so little land usage. I'm not saying it should be the solution, but I think it needs to be a big part of the mix.
You might know this. Do you know what part of the country by the year 2030 is going to have the most percentage of wind turbines in their area?
Oh, I don't know that.
South Texas.
that doesn't make sense.
South Texas,
They for being a conservative and mostly red state, they are.
People don't realize I'm from Texas. Texas is real big on energy. Like solar. I mean, people think of oil, like all the West Texas, Permian Basin, but we're really invested like nuclear, all kind of energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you can't argue with the economics.
No.
I do think there. And in general, I get frustrated when pro-climate people paint too rosy of a picture or too optimistic of a picture when it comes to any given climate technology or whatnot. But if you're talking about adding new capacity, coal can't touch renewables, not even close.
Yeah. One thing too, a lot of people say we have energy problem. I don't think we have energy problem. We have more enough energy. I think it's more of a distribution problem, right?
I think we have both a supply and a distribution problem. And unfortunately, neither one of them is cheap or easy to fix. Modernizing the grid, having long range DC transmission, that where we can, if it's sunny in one part of the country, we can divert power from there to a part of the country where the wind isn't blowing. And that sounds great, and maybe that should be the solution. But it's a multi-trillion-dollar, multi-decadal solution. And then the other camp is, well, we just need to overbuild capacity everywhere, and that is the right solution, but it's not happening, at least nowhere near fast enough.
So I've heard this, right? I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard people say like wind turbines is actually a bad thing because they kill all these birds.
I haven't studied this all that much.
I've driven past wind turbines in South Texas. I've never seen birds flying them, right?
Well, I
think it makes sense. Okay, birds are flying, not paying attention to turbines, kill them, whatever. To me, it's the same like saying a bird, you shouldn't fly planes because the bird's going to fly in the plane engine, right?
No, you're exactly right.
Does it happen? Yeah. Yes. But it's happened to most of these people saying, I don't know.
No. I mean, the folks that are saying that we shouldn't do it because of that reason.
Like thousands of flocks of birds are dying daily from the wind turbine.
No. Yes, birds do die. But, everything we do causes some impact along those levels. Is our wind turbines particularly bad in terms of those effects? Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about is a coal plant or a wind turbine better for birds? It's the wind turbine, because that coal plant is going to release pollution, it's going to release radioactivity, and that's much worse for the bird than the occasional strike. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So change the subjects. Are you still doing your refunder, or is that done with now? Your refunder?
The refunder's still going. Yep,
okay.
That's still ongoing. So I think we're a bit over 100K on that.
Okay.
That's the first external capital we've taken for Blue Dot. So it's we're not at the point yet where that is enough to get us to our next major milestone. But at the very least, not be writing checks from that personal account for the first time when I need to buy something for the business.
Why this decision to do a refund? People are like refunding. It doesn't mean that you do a refund, you get millions of dollars, they're going to give you money. But I think the stats show only 10% of them are actually successful. You don't really raise the money, right? So why people are saying you a refunder? It's a fucking full-time job, right? It's like a full-time marketing thing, blah, blah, blah.
It is definitely a lot of work. I think the aspect of it that most people don't realize is that it is mostly an extension of your own network. And our biggest weakness coming into it was that nobody involved in Blue Dot comes from a particularly well-moneyed network. It's partly just coincidence and probably partly just the types of folks that I've rolled with my entire life is not in those communities. So we had that handicap going against us. What we have going for us is that it's a new, completely novel, exciting thing that's in the automotive sector, which excites people. It's in climate, which excites people, and it honestly just makes so much sense that it resonates with a lot of people.
Talk about this. I know you have to do the terms right, like the safe note percentage of this. How do you come up deciding those terms?
There's kind of norms in the startup world, for a pre-seed round.
You do a safe note, right?
Yeah, we're doing a safe note. Yep. But you sort of you have these norms of for a pre-seed round, you should expect to give up this much equity, for a seed round, this much equity, and so you kind of backtrack from those numbers to come up with a reasonable valuation. We're not looking to get the best possible terms that we could, where we want to make sure that the folks that believe in us early are rewarded as much as possible. So, we certainly could have gone quite a bit higher on our val cap. based on the the market potential of the technology. But we want to make sure the folks who believed in us early are well taken care of.
So talk about this, right? So you use the term family and friends, right? Another one of my pet peeves with people, like investors say, raise their family and friends are like, motherfucker, I am the family and friends, right?
Yeah.
It's like this, so like I hate to use the term privilege, like man, like I don't have the privilege like a rich uncle or a rich aunt, right? Like it just like drives me batshit crazy when people say that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that was, I think the way a lot of people do their family and friends round is actually maybe not quite so copacetic relative to the SEC and how things are supposed to go in terms of being accredited investors and whatnot. So I chose to basically use the WeFunder, the early part of the WeFunder, to be my family and friends around. So it was sort of not invitation only, but I was only broadcasting it to family and friends, and I think we got up to something like $30K that way. So
and the minimum investment, I think, is $100.
Minimum investment is $100 for an individual. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you have to like actually raise like a certain amount of money for you to take money out, right?
You got to hit 50 to take anything out. Yep.
Okay.
Or to be able to close the campaign. Yep.
And I think they refund things like 6% or something like that.
I think 6.5. Yeah.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not the cheapest capital out there, but I just love the fact that it democratizes.
Yeah.
Being able to invest in early stage startups. It always kind of blew the idea of having to be an accredited investor to invest in a startup always rubbed me the wrong way.
Know,
it's
right?
Like you have different rules depending on how much money you have. It's kind of crazy.
That, you don't want somebody making $24,000 a year investing $5,000 in your startup and get scammed.
Yeah, but why do they let you go to the dog track? Why do they let you go to Vegas?
Like, you know what? I never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. To me, it's gatekeeping, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
So that's great. The great thing about the changes that the crowd equity legislation brought about is that it has democratized that quite a bit.
So change subjects again. Mm-hmm. You volunteer at some place called North Helpline.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Oh, it's a food bank in Lake City. I've actually been remiss in getting there the past 9 months to a year. There's just been unfortunately, the day that I typically go, there's been too many events going on relative to the Blue Dot. But I'll be getting back there soon, hopefully. But no, I've been volunteering there I think I started in 2017 or something like that. And it's just a way to connect with the community, give back a little bit. I from a selfish perspective, I like that it keeps me somewhat grounded, connected and exposed to aspects of our society that otherwise you maybe don't get to see.
So talk about the points of giving back to your community. Why is that important to you?
It's how you live your values, right? I mean, if you I think most people would say that they value the well-being of the people around us and people in our community, and hopefully people in general. And you don't have to look very far to see that people are really, really struggling. And if there's a way you can, help alleviate some of that, then you should do it.
So you're an endless asker of the term, can't this be better? Like, how do you go always try to the improvement process? How are you always trying to make things better?
Relative to
whatever the case may be.
I don't know. First, you got to ask, what are you capable of? What's in your wheelhouse? And you sort of have to match that to a need. And that's that can apply to something like volunteering at a food bank. Like, there's very few people that aren't capable of doing something like that. The hardest thing is probably finding the time. Most people we're starved for time. When you work full time, you're raising kids, it's trying to maintain a household, and the last thing you want to do is go out the door at the end of the day and go volunteer somewhere rather than plop down on the couch. That's hard. That's really hard. And I think that's, it's a systemic problem with our society. But at the end of the day, not everybody, but most people are capable of doing something along those lines. But then I think, when it comes to climate, if you recognize that it's a problem, and you have the skill set that is applicable to the solutions, it's hard for me to not want to match those two things together. And then I'd say in general, I've been a little disappointed in my profession, if that makes sense. In that I think there's not enough, particularly mechanical engineers. Those are we need real physical solutions to the climate change problem. And if you look at what percentage of engineers and particularly mechanical engineers are doing something not just for climate but something that's positively impactful in the world, it's probably pretty small. And that makes me a little bit disappointed in my profession. But hopefully as it becomes more visible of an issue and more front of mind, hopefully that changes.
So we're going to talk political stuff real fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know so I don't have much time, right? But I know 5, 7 years, 8 years ago, the state of Washington had all these incentives for people to buy EV cars, right? Tax incentives, gas, whatever the case be, right? And then I guess the politicians realized, oh man, everyone's buying EV cars, so no one's using gas, so no one's paying gas tax anymore. So the solution was, hey, if you have EV, I don't think they passed this law yet. The solution was, okay, if you have EV, we're going to charge you by the mile you drive, right?
Mm.
It's like, man, to me, that's kind of fucked up, right? Like you incentivize people to drive EVs like for the climate, and now you're going to charge them on a mile? Like, just making make sense to me,
Yeah, it's a very complicated issue. It's been studied a lot. There are a lot of proposed solutions. Where Washington is right now really sucks. I mean, I drive an EV and I have to pay an extra $150 on my registration because of it.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And I work from home. I'm doing far less miles per year than the average American. And so I'm paying way more on that fee than I would be in gas tax if I drove a regular car. So that's I think widely recognized as not a particularly fair way to do it. But obviously I respect that I need to contribute to the maintenance of the roads and our infrastructure. So I think there needs to be a solution whereby EV drivers do contribute. I think Oregon just rolled out their by mile system. And that's, I think, one of the better schemes out there is doing it by mile. It's like I said, super complicated because if you look at what actually drives road maintenance, vehicle weight plays a huge factor, and it's super non-linear. Yeah. If you drive a Geo Metro that weighs 2,000 pounds versus a truck that weighs 6,000 pounds, that's actually not where the biggest difference is. The biggest difference is that truck that weighs 6,000 pounds to that delivery truck that weighs 12,000 pounds. That's where the big difference is. So I don't have a real strong opinion on what the right solution is, but definitely some sort of, I think, weight and mileage based solution might be certainly better than what we have, just a flat fee. But I think the takeaway is that just relying on gas tax alone obviously can't continue. We have to do something else.
Yeah. So sometimes the stuff the state of Washington does is kind of mind bonkers. So I don't know this. So a few months ago, the state of Washington, they put out a government contract to build new ferries, right? They wanted the ferries to be EV, right? But because all the restrictions in the state of Washington, the company that put the bid in the state of Washington, the price was kind of high, right? But so the state of Washington awarded the contract company in Florida, right, who didn't have all the restrictions, right? Mm. And so, first of all, why are you getting a company? So in Florida, they want a contract when they build these ferries, they have to ship all the way through the Panama Canal, all the extra costs, right? But because all the restrictions in the state of Washington, because the climate, whatever case it be, it increased the cost, right?
Yeah.
But I was thinking you're going to contract, okay, are you punishing your own business, right? And how can you be the state of Washington and give your contract to someone outside the state of Washington? It's I didn't understand that.
No, and I think it speaks to a larger issue of in the climate space. Nothing is a closed system, and you wind up playing a game of whack-a-mole. You you address emissions in one place with policy, and that just pushes those emissions into another place. And that's a real, and until we have a unified global framework in place with consistent rules that everybody's following, that's going to be a problem.
My thing was like, man, no one on the pro committee was talking to us, okay, like, we're going to actually give a contract. It's like someone in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, assuming some scale, okay, instead of Washington, you have to meet all requirements, but you get like some kind of altitude scale, whatever, like, and of course they come like, man, we will never bid on instead of Washington contract again in our life, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about that issue. I mean, I know that, ship building, vessel building in general has almost evaporated in the United States. So I don't know if we had good local options even in place anymore. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But it's, obviously there is an element of hypocrisy if you're going to do something for a climate reason, and then you're going to take the business away from a company because of your climate policies, making it too expensive. Obviously I don't know if that's what happened here, but if that were the case, that would be an element of hypocrisy there.
Florida's probably like, maybe I'm making this up, probably is probably like most. It's probably not known as being pro-climate, right?
Oh, definitely not. Yeah. Which is
the fact that they contract somewhere in Florida, right?
Yeah, which is it's ironic because they're probably
here, Florida's way down here,
and they're probably the most vulnerable state to climate change, which makes it kind of. I mean, you couldn't make up a better parody than what's going on with the politics in this country in that aspect. Yeah.
So how does your tech work?
How does our tech work? Well, basically. It's a family of bolt-on electric propulsion systems that can be added to essentially any light-duty vehicle, and it provides enough electric range for a typical driver to do all their daily driving under electric power without turning on their engine, without burning a drop of gas. But the engine stays in there, so you can always use it for the road trip or for towing or some of those situations where EVs don't necessarily perform all that well in use case. What really sets us apart, because people have been converting vehicles for decades, but it's always been an extremely expensive prospect and very unscalable. And so what I set out to fix were those two aspects of the conversion concept. How do we make it much more cost effective and dramatically more scalable? And that's how we landed on our specific product architectures to achieve those two goals.
So I'm guessing someone from your company will actually go to the person's house or whatever and put this system on their car? Or how does that work?
So the longer term vision is to have an extensive network of installation partners. So that can be anywhere from a independent mechanic who's gone through an online training program to learn how to install our systems, up to a national franchise. So there are these auto shops that exist in a national scale. Ideally, you'd be able to take your vehicle to any given fill in the blank. Firestone, NTB, something like that, and have the system installed. One of the things we've done to make that feasible is that we've kept our installation process super simple and consistent and non-invasive. You can't expect any given mechanic to be able to engineer a solution for a particular vehicle. We've kept our technology we call vehicle agnostic. So within a given vehicle category, so let's say pickup trucks, it's going to be the same exact system, whether it's going on an F-150 or a Silverado or a Tacoma, and the installation process is the same. There's no special customization or fabrication that has to happen. And so now that installation can be done by somebody with just a little bit of familiarity with the process, and it can be done in one day. So you're not eating into all of your potential savings with the labor cost that it takes to install it.
How does the maintenance of the system work?
It's pretty straightforward. So one of the nice things about our system is that if anything goes wrong with it, the vehicle can just be reverted back to normal operation. That same installation network will be able to do some basic troubleshooting and repair. But basically the fallback is that any given problematic component that might fail can be removed from the vehicle, sent back to a central processing facility. We can either hot swap in a replacement, or we can wait for that unit to be repaired and sent back and reinstalled on the vehicle.
So two-part question, like where are you making this at right now? And what's the plan to make it like in the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're still very, very early. We're still in the prototyping phase. We're basically we're more than a proof of concept because we do have our systems on a real vehicle driving around in the real world. So definitely more than a proof of concept. But we're not up to what I would call alpha prototype standards. So the prototypes we have aren't fully featured. They don't have all the performance and features of the final product. So from a user perspective, we're not quite fully fleshed out yet. So that's our next big stage in development, is to build that alpha prototype. So right now we're still working out of our facility, out of my garage, where we have a full fabrication machine shop and ability to do all this work.
So another two-part question, like first part, like what is it made out of? Like aluminum, steel, or like plastic? And then how did you decide what this material would be that you made this product out of?
Well, I mean, material selection is a huge part of engineering. It comes down to individual components. You have to look at what are the stresses it's going to be subjected to. What are the constraints? What are you trying to optimize for? Is it weight? Is it size? Is it stiffness? Is it fatigue strength? And just making your decision based on that. Cost obviously is a factor too. We have. Any engineering material you want to name, we probably have it in our system. We've got aluminum parts, steel parts, might even have some carbon fiber parts in there if it makes sense. So that's just an engineering decision on a part by part basis.
So someone's about this product from you, should they expect it like last 5 years, lifetime, 2 years? Like what's the lifetime expectancy so far? We are penciling in an expected lifespan of at least 12 years. The limiting factor will likely be batteries. There's been a kind of a flood of new data in recent months that have shown that EV batteries are lasting longer than really anybody expected them to. So I think if anything, that's conservative, saying a 12-year lifespan. The nice thing about our technology is that it can outlast the vehicle. If let's say you put it on a 10, 15-year-old vehicle, and if a couple of years down the road, the vehicle craps the bed, the engine fails, the frame rots, you can take that system off of that vehicle, and as long as it's the same category of vehicle, you can put it on another one, and you're essentially just paying the installation cost, which is one day's of mechanics time. So you want to put this obviously on non-EV vehicles, but as far as a year, like, are you trying to put it on vehicles like made from 2000 to 2010, 1990 to 2025, or does the year model even matter? So we have two product families. One's for truck-based vehicles, the other's for car-based vehicles, and then each of those essentially is available in two different sizes depending on how big and heavy the vehicle is. I forgot what your question was. So, like, does it matter what year model it is? Oh, right. It really doesn't. We've designed probably the biggest engineering challenge that we took on and that we solved was how to make the technology vehicle agnostic. Like I said, if it's the hardware doesn't change if it's one vehicle or another. Our sweet spot is probably vehicles in the 5 to 10 year old range, just because they have enough lifespan left in them to fully utilize the life of our product. The average vehicle nowadays lasts about 21 years. So you got lots of sort of post warranty life to take advantage of for a system like ours. We are specifically marketing towards vehicles that are, kind of 3 to 5 years old or more, because of this perceived issue around how warranties work. I think a lot of people in the United States think that when you do something to a car, you automatically void your warranty, and that's 100% not the case. There's laws on the book that says that the burden is on the manufacturer to demonstrate that something you did caused a particular failure, and we certainly don't expect our systems to cause failures, but we do appreciate that is a perceived issue, and I also recognize that somebody who buys a brand new shiny car might not necessarily want to go immediately and throw something like our system on it. So really the sweet spot for us is that kind of 5 to 10 year old vehicle. But there's honestly no reason why you couldn't put it on something much older.
and either just keep that vehicle going as long as you possibly can, which is a great thing from an environmental perspective. It takes a huge amount of energy to make a car. And then, if it does happen to crap out, you can move it on to a different vehicle.
So let's say someone wants to put your product on their car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like it's a whole day process? They go somewhere and within 30 minutes it's on the car. Like, how does that work?
It's about a 1 day process. So, to oversimplify, drop your car off in the morning, pick it up in the evening. Okay. We basically want to make this just about as easy as buying tires and use a very similar process. If you buy tires online, you purchase from the retailer, but then they refer you to a local installer, and you basically, they ship the tires there. You drop your car off, and you pick it up once it's done. We want the same type of process.
Can you talk some about the business model and how your pricing works? Like, was the business model like you said, maybe use Goodyear, used car dealerships, and I use Goodyear. Is Goodyear going to pay you amount of money to do this for them and pass the cost to the customer, or the customer pay you directly? And then how do you decide the right price? Yeah,
so we'll have an installation agreement in place with these third party installers. And we're still working out the details of whether that will be kind of purely hourly based or whether it will be, based on the, a basic installation plus, some particular add-ons depending on whether the vehicle needs certain optional accessories on it or not. But then, we're basically, there's nothing really fancy about our business model. We're selling a product, we're selling these kits at about a 40% gross margin. Retail prices will start for smaller vehicles down around $6,000. You get up to something like a heavy duty pickup truck, an F350, something like that. You'd be in the sort of $9,000 to $10,000 range. But at that price point, if you're sort of a typical driver, particularly here in the Northwest where gas is really expensive and electricity is quite cheap, that vehicle is going to pay for itself in a couple of years, 3 years. And one of the kind of major tipping points that unlocks is that through financing, you can make these products available with no out-of-pocket expense, where the savings will be greater than the monthly payment. So you can install one of these systems and be saving money from day one with no out-of-pocket expense. And then at the end of that financing period, all those savings thereafter are just gravy.
So it's safe to say you consider yourself like a builder?
Sure.
So what else are you building? Like maybe side projects or building some for fun? I'm sure you probably go out building other stuff, right?
Yeah. It's unfortunately, I tend to direct most of those efforts towards furthering the business. So more on the prototyping side of things. I tend to use building things and spending time in the shop as my kind of recentering and recharging activity. So if I'm starting to feel a bit burnt out from the constant kind of fundraising or strategic initiatives that we have. I'll spend some time in the shop, and that might be either a prototype or something to improve the prototype, or some kind of little productivity aid for the shop, something like that. That's how I tend to recharge. So,
a lot of people say they want to raise money, right? But you got to raise money from the right investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sure that when you raise money, it's from the right investor?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I know. This is my first time doing this. Hopefully I don't get it wrong. We haven't taken any institutional capital yet. We have a few interesting irons in the fire this summer. If any of those land, we might not need to raise institutionally for a bit longer yet. But if they don't, we'll probably be back to the kind of fundraising grind late summer, early fall. At the end of the day, I'm kind of learning as I go. I don't know. I certainly know that I want to be mission aligned as much as possible with my investors. At some point, you can't be too choosy. So hopefully I don't have to compromise too much. But we've got we definitely need patient capital, because this is not a hit the market in 3 months kind of endeavor. So we need capital on the more patient side of things. So we've been primarily, we've done some ad hoc attempts at fundraising over the years, and we've been almost exclusively focused on impact investment groups. That's been a bit disappointing and eye-opening in terms of how little the rhetoric tends to align with the actions in that space. But we still are still primarily interested in somebody who obviously cares about the financial returns, but also is looking to do something positive and impactful with their capital.
So from your point of view, what has to happen for Blue Dot Motorworks like be successful, whatever successful is to you?
I mean, we need the capital. There's no getting around that. I think our main challenge is that we are essentially trying to unlock a new market space, and the kind of documented proof that the demand in that market space will exist is not there yet. But yet we have what I would call a capital barrier to establishing that proof. Because it's really a new category of product, we need, I think, to have something that we can put a potential customer behind the wheel of, and have them actually drive it and say, all right, this is the product you'd actually be buying from us, and you can decide here and now whether that's going to work for you or not. But there's a capital barrier to establishing that. So the term I use is the iron triangle. We're in this zone where we need at the end of the day, fairly modest amount of funding to get the development done that will give us the prototype that we need to bring the customer. Unfortunately, the investors that are going to provide that capital want to see the customers before any of that happens. So
it's like that chicken and egg bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've kind of been poking at all three of those legs of the triangle somewhat evenly over the past few years, trying to figure out which one's likely to break first and enable the other two. But in an ideal world, some funding would come in, pretty modest amount that would get us to the next milestone, and then we'd be able to bring the customers with that.
So next question is kind of like way more negative. If blank happens, you have to shut it down.
Oof. I mean, I'm committed, even if I continue to to slowly go broke. I'm committed I got a while in me left where I can feel like I can keep slowly going broke. In terms of like market conditions, if somebody comes out with a better solution that fills this need, then I'd be happy to walk away and do something else. I've got lots of other things I'd like to pursue at various times. The reason why I can't do that is because I recognize the need for what we're doing, and just to kind of give that perspective. Well, first of all, we know that EVs aren't being adopted fast enough for us to hit our climate targets. That's a problem. We need to ramp up adoption much faster than it's happening. But the problem that I think most people don't realize is that even if we hit the most wildly optimistic adoption scenarios for electric vehicles, we'd still fall well short of hitting our actual climate targets for the automotive sector. There's 1.5 billion cars on the road right now. 98% of them are conventional cars. We're continuing to make predominantly conventional cars, and we will be for the next decade to come, if not more. If you crunch the math on how slowly that stock turns over and becomes electrified, in even, like I said, the most wildly optimistic scenarios, there will be too many gas and diesel cars on the road for too long for us to hit our climate targets. And road transportation is the biggest source of greenhouse gases if you rank them by end use. So what's the energy being used for? Road transportation is the biggest source. So if we fail badly in the most polluting sector, what hope do we have overall? I'd say not very much. So fully put a viable, at scale and cost effective retrofit solution in the category of this is a need to have solution, not a nice to have solution. And I have not seen another approach or technology that has any chance of filling that gap. So got to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I know, like in Vietnam, I think it's about so Vietnam, they have all these gas powered scooters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Vietnamese government put out like by I think it's 2030 or 2035 they want everybody EV, and people are like they give us like there's no way you're gonna replace all the scooters in Vietnam by 2030 2035. Just like
probably not. Yeah,
it's like so unrealistic, right?
Yeah, and that's I think you can see it here in Washington. The sort of legislative approach has been we're just going to say we're going to do this and then expect that it's going to happen. Real world doesn't work that way. We have the Climate Commitment Act, which in theory limits the amount of carbon we can emit over on a decreasing basis over the years, but they built in a safety valve. Like you can, if not enough credits are available, they can create additional credits and sell onto that market. And so, one of my sort of policy claims is that all these complicated schemes and everything, they all essentially, at the point that you actually enforce them, they all essentially devolve into a carbon tax. And so my view is always, let's just start with a carbon tax. Let's just do a carbon tax because it's much easier to administer, much lower overhead, much simpler. Obviously, that's been a political non-starter for as far back as you want to go. But I do think that situation is changing, and I think we can implement it in a way that would be much more palatable to most of the population by coupling it with a dividend. If we're saying basically charging on a usage basis for carbon, but then giving money back on a per capita basis, and then basically I think the missing component has been having a loan program where somebody can take that dividend and use that to offset a loan that can be used to purchase a decarbonizing technology. So, if you get let's say you get a few $100 carbon dividend every month, that doesn't necessarily do you any good unless you can actually do something with it that would reduce your carbon emissions, particularly if you're lower income and you can't get good terms on a loan. But if you could say, all right, that carbon dividend is going to get applied automatically to the loan that I use to buy an EV. Well, great. Now you've cut your emissions. You've avoided that carbon tax. It's kind of a win-win-win.
I mean, obviously, that makes too much sense to no one ever fucking adopt that.
I think it has been tried. I'm not entirely sure. I think Canada did something similar somewhere at some point. Like the tax and dividend, that's been done. But like I said, a couple $100 a month may not do much for you if the only loan you can qualify for is at 18%.
Yeah.
So having that, being able to apply that dividend to a loan to buy an EV, buy a heat pump, I think is what might unlock a lot of personal decisions.
So you might not know this, but I think most people, they think like the climate leading countries, they think like Norway, Sweden, Finland, like the Nordic countries. Are those countries really leading the way in climate around the world?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to make a statement on that. A lot of them have sovereign wealth funds where that money has come from the oil business.
Like Norway's a perfect example of that, yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit, I'm not sure we can just blanketly say that because they're taking a lot of action that means that they're doing so much better than everybody else. It's great that they are, for sure. But they also, I think, maybe have a bit more luxury to take action than some other nations.
It's easy if you know where you have like literally trillions of dollars in oil reserve funds, like to kind of,
Yeah, for sure. But like I said, this is certainly not my bailiwick. Yeah. I'm not. I can't really make any definitive statements there. Yeah.
Yeah, but kudos on Norway for actually like using our money the right way versus a lot of countries like get all this money and fucking just blow and
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean if you're gonna have oil money, like better to spend it on something like that than just getting more oil money.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you have going on the next few months? I mean, past the climate week, past the stuff you go next week, what do you have going on the next couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's a couple of irons in the fire. We talked about Tata, and we don't yet know if anything's going to come from those conversations. We're in conversations with a division of another major global automotive manufacturer, and trying to figure out how we might potentially work together, because they do see the value in our approach, and they recognize the problem that we're trying to solve of what we call the legacy fleet, and the fact that it won't go away fast enough for climate success. And so if we can figure out a way to work with them, that could be enough to get us off to the races in terms of hitting our next couple of milestones. And then we are also potentially going to be accepted into a pilot program with a extremely large fleet operator, with a presence in every major metropolitan area in the world. And if we get into that program, I think we would also be off to the races. Absent any of that landing, then we're really looking at, like I said before, kind of end of summer, early fall, getting back to the fundraising grind to try to bring in enough to get us to our next milestone.
So how do you deal with the emotional roller coaster of having to start like most people like one day they're up, one day they're down, but like after almost like minute to minute, you're like up down, right?
Yeah.
So how do you handle that emotionally for your mental health?
That's a good question. It's gotten easier for sure. Those first couple of VC angel rejections, those hit pretty hard. But you kind of come to expect it. You go in with you shift your expectations, and you sort of expect that to some degree. It's a bit of a balancing act, because obviously you can't, if you go in pre-defeated, you're likely going to manifest that and make it more likely to happen. So there's a balancing act between you gotta go in with enough skepticism that it's not emotionally crushing when it doesn't work out, but not let that kind of poison the well of what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
The last thing you do, like pitch an investor, I know you're probably going to invest in me, but anyway.
Yeah, for sure. But also there's the whole saying of, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. So you can kind of blend some of that into your approach as well, for sure.
So on June 8th, I hosted the Jason Cavness Experience Deep Tech Demo Day. You want to come to that demo there?
Yeah.
Can you just talk about the experience there, and then hopefully what you got out of it?
Oh, that was fantastic. For us, as I mentioned, like we're not a particularly well-moneyed network. Like we're not kind of highly visible big shots. So getting the word out is just so important. And being able to have a voice, get exposure, have the right people take notice. It's just so important. You look back at all the kind of blow up companies of the past several decades, and you can almost trace each one of them back to some, critical introduction that was made, some critical relationship that was formed that really catalyzed that phenomenal growth. And maybe that hasn't happened for us yet, but if it weren't for events like yours, we'd have no hope of that ever happening. So it fills a super vital role in the ecosystem here. Super grateful that we had that opportunity. So thank you.
Yeah. So I think some entrepreneurs, sometimes they focus too much on product, sometimes focus too much on marketing. Like, how do you make sure you have the right balance between marketing and building the product?
Yeah, good question. I definitely, by default, I err way too far on the product side of things, as I think most engineers do. I think it's maybe a bit more important for us to be closer to that end of the spectrum because of the novelty of what we're doing and the way that our technology is what unlocks the market. The market wouldn't be there if we didn't have our specific technology and the 360 pages of patent material that we filed to get to where we are. So I think we can probably be more product focused than is kind of widely viewed as the right amount. Certainly getting out of my kind of product focused comfort zone and embracing the business development side of things has been a real area of growth for me. It's something that I've very much eschewed through the early part of my career. I think for some of the reasons why I kind of shied away from networking, just kind of don't want to be the used car salesman type of person. And then, obviously figuring out the right mindset to take into it is important. And, realizing that, I want to sell you something because I know it's going to make your life better. It's going to help you achieve your goals. It's going to help your organization achieve its goals. And taking that mindset into it helps a lot with kind of getting over that engineer's mindset of, I don't want to be the salesman.
Definitely. So this question, hopefully this question has catch you off guard, right? So back in the day, like when the iPod first came out with Steve Jobs, there was all kinds of like iPod, like kind of like things out there already, right? But people would say, hey, use this, whatever it was, as 2.3 hertz, 4.2 this, 9.1, like all these features, right? All these details. And Steve Jobs got up on stage and said, 1,000 songs in your pocket, right?
Right.
and iPod was like probably like was nowhere near the best product out, right? So what is, in your mind, what is your like 1,000 songs in the pocket thing that you can tell people?
Yeah, basically we tell people they can cut their fuel use by 80% and not have to give up anything.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
It makes like how many people I found like they like go feature deep, like 1.9 this, 2.2 this, 7.1 this.
Right.
And if you're like, I don't care.
Yeah. And, I think, similar to why I think we could and should be a bit more product focused than what's generally established as the right balance. We also, I think, lead with a bit more technical detail than is generally considered the right balance. And that's because of, this phenomenon. We say everybody's a mechanical engineer, right? And that doesn't mean that everybody is a mechanical engineer. It means that everybody kind of views themselves to some degree as a mechanical engineer because the stuff we do, it's out there and visible and you can see how it works. And particularly in the automotive space and particularly amongst men, lots of people know something about cars. Yeah. And we definitely we went kind of the conventional approach early in our pitching journey where we had very little technical detail in our pitch deck. We'd send it off and then we'd get a rejection with a few lines about, we think this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. And it's like, well, okay, we've solved all those problems. We didn't put the detail in there because you're not supposed to put the detail in there, but you obviously, feel empowered because everybody's a mechanical engineer, you feel empowered to bring up these issues. And once somebody has made that decision, there's no going back. Like you're never going to convince them that they should consider you because you've addressed all those issues. It does not the way the investor mindset works. So we have since put quite a bit more detail in at least the deck that we send ahead, to try to get ahead of some of those issues that people who know a bit about cars and know a bit about mechanical stuff might object to right off the bat. So
on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, how do you make sure you focus on what's priority, right? Like a lot of people have the challenge, like they know need like priority number 1 first, but they focus on number 10 or 15, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I have a method for determining that. I think we have kind of our urgency versus importance matrix of all the things that have to happen. It's mostly in my head, to be honest. But then there's an element of you have to be opportunistic if an opportunity pops up that doesn't necessarily fit with that matrix, but you got to jump on it right away. You do that, and then there's an element of I probably should be doing this, but man, it's been a rough 6 weeks. Like I'm gonna go build something in the shop for a couple of days and recenter myself. So giving yourself the freedom to do that is helpful.
So how about this? Like suppose you have something that's on your list, maybe. If we say it's like number 10, 13, 14, right? But it's done been up like maybe 3 or 4 months, right? You're like, man, it's been on my list for 3 months. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not. Maybe I should take it off the list. Or you're like, oh, you know what? I put it on my list for a reason, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna stay on there until I actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I tend to have days when it's like, all right, I just need to I need to clean house. I gotta knock some of that lower priority stuff off because the length of the list can become a mental drag. Yeah. And so just shortening the list, even if you're addressing the things that aren't the highest priority, can pay outsized returns.
It does give you a dopamine hit real fast too. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Like,
yeah.
I took the trash out today. Woo!
Yeah. And that's why it's nice. Like if you have a checklist, it's nice when you check something off. It doesn't go away. It just shows up as being checked off, and being able to see, holy crap, I checked all these things off this past week. That helps a lot.
That's funny. Yeah. So you talk about taking care of your health. How do you take care of your health?
Yeah, mostly. I err on the side of just physical activities being my main thing. I try to eat healthy, but I'd rather exercise more and have the occasional burger or steak than kind of go kind of fully vegetarian and be more sedate. From a calorie balance, they're probably the same, but for me, I was an athlete growing up and in college, and just being physically active has always been part of my lifestyle. So that's the main thing, is making sure that I try to get my workout out of the way first thing in the morning. Get up at 5:30 or 6 and do a workout, and then get my day started after that. And then use if I can have a free weekend, try to get out to do a long hike or a long mountain bike ride or something like that.
And so you said you live in Seattle for 15 years?
Mm-hmm.
You actually live in Seattle or somewhere outside of Seattle?
Actually in Seattle, yeah. Yeah, the northern extent of Seattle, but okay. Seattle proper, yeah.
So let's suppose someone comes to Seattle the first time. Like, what should they do, right? Like, be a tour guide for a couple of for someone.
It's super touristy, but I think absolutely worth it and super awesome. I direct everybody to do an underground tour.
Yeah,
I think they're amazing, and it's such a unique aspect of our history, and the companies that do it do a really good job.
Pioneer Square where that place takes place.
Yeah, exactly. They send it right to your neighborhood, for sure. And the normal stuff. Pike Market's great, just for the vibe and the scene there. If they're an outdoorsy person, I'll say you really should try to get out to the mountains.
Yeah.
Either head east into Snoqualmie Pass or something and go for a little hike, or take the ferry over to Bainbridge. Maybe you can get to the Olympics if you have time.
Island, man, I try to go Bainbridge Island at least once a year, right?
Oh, do you? Yeah.
Just the view from the ferry of the downtown Seattle. It's just amazing. I love that place.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then with the ocean, like 3 hours away too. The ocean's right here too,
Yeah, and it's really the juxtaposition of the dynamic, growing, vibrant, and liberal city right next to the ocean and backed up right against the mountains. That's what made this place magical for me. And I'm still. It was a bit of a chore to get here. I had a lot of ducks I had to line up, including getting my mother moved out this way. And so every once in a while I'm still just like I made it. It's been 15 years, but I still feel like, I finally made it here. And then, I think everybody in particularly transplants know that magical moment where it's been cloudy for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden you get a somewhat clear day, and you come around a corner and there's rain here.
Yeah.
And it startles you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, holy crap, there's a giant mountain right there. And I love that moment.
Yeah, and with geography, like I didn't realize this for a few years. Like, I don't think people realize that Seattle's actually way above Boston, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that far above, but it is definitely we're way up there.
Like some people call us South Alaska.
Yeah, yeah. But thank God we have that western continental coast climate that keeps us from being as cold as Boston. I certainly don't miss.
Yeah, those winters are like
yeah, especially because I lived in New Hampshire for 10 years.
I've been to Kansas, Germany, like it's just freaking cold.
It's cold.
It doesn't get that cold here compared to other places.
And I think people who haven't lived that don't appreciate just how much work it is. Like you gotta shovel your walk, you gotta snowblow your driveway, and like you're not cut any grace for that. You still got to get to work on time. You still gotta leave, put in a full day of work and go and do it all over again.
Another thing I like about living on the West Coast is the fact like all the sports stuff starts at 5 p.m. right?
Right, yeah, that's nice.
So you can watch the whole game. Of course, you got to work at 5, probably get home 5:36. You missed some of the game, but you can still watch the whole game, bro. If you're in the East Coast, the game starts at 8.
Yeah,
it's over 11 p.m.
Right.
If I go to bed at 12 p.m., get up at 6. That's so fucking brutal.
No, it's rough. Yeah, and it was back in college, so it didn't matter because the schedules were so late. But I used to host a movie night at my fraternity. It would start after Monday Night Football, so we'd be starting the movie at like midnight, and then you're up till 2 or 3 o'clock.
So what's your take on the EPA? I think EPA is still around, but it seems like when Democrats are in charge, like they're pro climate, pro EPA. Republicans come, they want to get rid of the EPA, right?
Yep.
I mean, first, I think EPA has a place. We need to do clean water, clean air, right? Sometimes I do think they take it too far sometimes, but what's your take on the EPA?
I mean, the federal EPA, I mean, it's we absolutely need them. They should be playing a major role in making sure that we address climate change. Obviously, clean water, clean air, super important for our health and the health of our environment. I think the bureaucracy created by having an organization like that can be counterproductive in that we need to do a lot of things to protect the environment, and a lot of regulations and whatnot were created in the mindset of if somebody wants to do something just to make a buck, there's a certain amount of red tape that you feel comfortable putting in the way because they're just out there to make a buck. Like, I think we need to have a different rubric when we're talking about things that are being done for a societal benefit. And so I almost wish there was kind of a two-tiered system. If something was being done to do a clean energy project, that there's a different process or a different bar that has to be met versus if you're building a condo complex or something like that. Now, if you're building low income, maybe you qualify for that lighter duty process. But if you're a purely commercial endeavor, I feel totally fine with the bar being higher than if you are doing something that you're actually society needs in place and is going to happen no matter what, because society needs it. So let's make sure that we streamline that process as much as possible. So permitting reform, super important. That's getting a lot of attention these days. Not my area of expertise because that's mostly built environment stuff, and I'm transportation. But yeah,
I think if you ask most Americans who created the EPA, there was some liberal president. But I'm pretty sure it was Richard M. Nixon who started the EPA, right?
Yeah,
pretty knows like a conservative person, right?
Well, and that's why where we are as a nation right now is it's just absurd that having clean water, having clean air has become a political issue.
Do you want your kids drinking muddy water or
water? Somehow that's woke. I don't get it.
I don't either. So
especially because you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. You want your kid growing up in the dirty air that's gonna give them asthma, and now maybe they're not gonna get that sports scholarship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Come on, shooting yourself in the foot.
Does each state have their version of the EPA?
Yeah, states have EPAs. Yep, okay. Yep, and don't get me wrong, those bureaucracies can be super counterproductive if they operate in bad modes. Super counterproductive to their own goals. I had my own issue with the New Hampshire EPA when I was trying to replace my septic system. It's like what you're doing is if anything going to make create a worse situation for the environment than what we're trying to do. But I don't know if it's power hungry type individuals, which can happen in any organization, not just government organizations. But I think it has to be everything has to be rational. It has to be grounded in reality and what's going to be best.
Let's suppose someone makes you like the climate czar or the climate person in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one thing you'd want to do?
Oh, God, there's so many. If I could pick one, it would be the carbon tax dividend and loan program that I mentioned earlier. I think that we don't live in a centrally planned economy. We can't just say by fiat this is what everybody has to do and is going to do. We have to have the market choose the solutions. But people say putting your thumb on the scales if it's a bad thing. Like, no, we have to put our thumb on the scales because otherwise you just externalize everything. You got to put your thumb on the scale to make sure that those externalities are priced in. Otherwise, you don't have a free market. You have a fantasy.
So this is probably an ignorant question, but do different size cars based on weight or different size engines based on cylinder give out different CO2 emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty basically a 1-to-1 correlation between the miles per gallon that a vehicle gets and what its CO2 emissions are. The things that determine that it's complex. Weight plays a factor. Size in terms of how much aerodynamic drag there is plays a factor. How efficient the powertrain is plays a factor. Before we used to have large naturally aspirated engines. Now we've been kind of incorporating smaller turbocharged engines, although I think a lot of that is driven by the test cycles that are used to determine fuel economy and not necessarily the real world fuel economy. So I think the difference between let's just say a 4-liter naturally aspirated V6 and a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder is not as great as the numbers, EPA numbers would have you believe. But then of course you get into varying levels of hybridization. You've got mild hybrids, you've got full hybrids, you've got plug-in hybrids. And I don't know if it came out earlier, but our conversion systems convert vehicles into plug-in hybrids. And I think that is really the sweet spot for where most people are in America today in terms of what's the kind of lowest environmental impact vehicle that would deliver an acceptable user experience to them. I think it's plug-in hybrids, and unfortunately, I think not enough people even know what that is. When I have conversations with people and I explain what Blue Dot's product is, half the time they're just amazed by the concept of a plug-in hybrid. They don't even know that you can go out and buy a plug-in hybrid today.
That's crazy.
It's wild, yeah. And then the other half of the time they're amazed that it's a retrofit thing that can be done to any car. Like that blows their mind too. But the number of times when it's like you could just go out and buy a RAV4 plug-in hybrid and be getting almost 50 miles of electric range, but still have an engine. And it's for some reason that
it's
knowledge,
like decades old technology, right?
It has, it's old, and they're getting better and better. It used to be like maybe you'd get 20, 25 miles, and now it's 35 to 50 miles. Like it's getting better and better. But if you look at the way, the kind of meat of the market, how most people drive and what most people's situation is, that's going to be somebody living in a single family home, driving somewhere around 30 to 40 miles a day. And then either aspirationally or actually going on a road trip from time to time, taking a longer trip, towing something. And man, a plug-in hybrid just fits that use case perfectly. Gets you 80% of the way to what an EV would give you in terms of emissions reduction, but comes with no sacrifices, no drawbacks. I think that's where we should be focusing.
So can we track this? Like, suppose the CO2 gets released in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Does this stay in the air for the rest of forever? Does it dissipate? What's a life cycle of a CO2 cell?
Yeah. It's essentially, CO2 doesn't break down in the atmosphere like a lot of chemicals do, like methane, for example, breaks down eventually. It's essentially there forever until some natural cycle takes it out. So that's going to be, biomass growth, and that's going to be weathering of rocks. Rocks, certain types of rocks absorb CO2 and get washed away by rain. I think this is, again, not super my area of specialty, but I think those are the two major processes. But it basically took the planet a few 100 million years to absorb the kind of dinosaur era level of CO2 that we had that gave that, jungle hot environment that we associate with dinosaurs. It took a few 100 million years for those natural processes to take that carbon and put it back underground. And we've undone all of that in a couple 100 years.
But I could be wrong. I'm not a scientist, but don't trees and plants use CO2 for like photosynthesis?
Yeah, they absorb CO2. The problem with biomass is that that CO2 that they absorb to build their structures, to build the cellulose that makes up their cells, that gets returned to the atmosphere when that plant dies and decomposes.
Okay.
It's only this tiny fraction that actually gets sequestered, that eventually might turn into coal or oil. Okay. It's only that tiny fraction that gets taken out of the atmosphere in that cycle.
So obviously we're not close there now, but the goal is not to have zero CO2, right? Because you do need some CO2, right?
Well, we definitely need CO2 in the atmosphere.
But obviously not the level we have right now.
No, we'd be okay. Like if the CO2 level in the atmosphere stabilized at where we are at today, we'd be okay. We'd maybe, and again, not super my area of expertise, but I think we'd just based on the amount of kind of locked in energy, temperatures would continue to rise a bit, but then they'd stabilize pretty quickly. It's really the continued emissions that are continuing to increase the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere that are driving us to a higher and higher, steady state temperature. So at some point, we will hopefully have our emissions, our man-made emissions, reach the same level as what's being taken out of the atmosphere by natural processes, and will stabilize at a certain concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. And there's a direct correlation between that CO2 concentration and how many degrees of warming the planet will experience.
Are there studies that show, like, because of increased CO2, like there's more like cancer, more asthma, more negative health effects for people?
Yeah, no, I mean that increased concentration of CO2, it's the CO2 itself, it's not a carcinogen. I don't believe it causes asthma or anything like that. It's really the secondary effects. So obviously the main one is the temperature. The planet gets hotter. With that hotter planet comes more severe storms, more severe droughts, more frequent storms, so sea level rise, wildfire. So obviously we're super sensitive to that. I mean, when I moved here, wildfire smoke was not a thing. Now you can pretty much count on it every year. And that does have an effect on asthma and health and cancer and whatnot. Yeah.
So back to being critical of climate fuel a little bit, right? So I remember a few years ago, they had this big fire in LA, the Palisades fire. Mm-hmm. And some people were blaming the climate, right? Like, no, it was because the city of LA didn't invest in the infrastructure for the water stuff, right? Mm. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, climate is a long-term trend.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think too many people, this happened today, it's climate.
No, and that's, I think sure, there are plenty of people that I think, kind of give the climate community a bit of a bad name because they don't fully understand it and they're making claims that aren't actually accurate to what's going on, and that's detrimental to the cause for sure. But it's all about the long-term trend and what things are getting more severe and what things are getting more frequent and what things are shifting geographically. Mm-hmm. Things that might have been a problem or not been a problem for one geography might be a problem for that geography in the future, like frequent wildfires or droughts. I think I haven't verified whether this is actually true, but I thought I heard somewhere that the maple syrup harvest has shifted by 4 weeks in parts of the country.
That sounds right.
Which is just, that's wild. And I'm sure it's a very sensitive system with the freeze-thaw cycles that are required and whatnot. But man, a 4-week shift in a natural cycle like that is crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So are you generally positive or negative about the future of climate in the United States?
I'm a bit more negative than I was a couple of years ago, just based on what's happening politically in this country. I think we're at the point now. So when I really got into this space, the 2018 IPCC Paris Accord report and everything on really saying like, look, it would be worth it to us to make the investments necessary to keep warming below 1.5 C. And it was a couple years ago when we had to say, all right, we missed that target. We have to accept we missed that target. And so now we're sort of kind of fallen back to what the original target was of 2C. Now I'm starting to hear people say, you know what, 2C's pretty much locked in at this point. Like we need to be thinking further. And it's super disheartening that we keep drawing these lines in the sand and then keep crossing over them. I'm not sure I agree that we've crossed over the 2C threshold being locked in yet, but we might be getting pretty darn close. And so that's disheartening. I think the general consensus is that existing climate policies should keep us below 3C, but that's assuming the policies are actually implemented and followed and met, and there's no guarantee of that. And honestly, 3Cs, that's a pretty bad result. So, the way we tend to frame the Blue Dot contribution is by looking at a success-based scenario. So we say, all right, what would have to happen to drive automotive emissions low enough, fast enough to actually align with a 2C, what we call a carbon budget. So you basically take how much carbon can we emit and still stay below 2C. We're going to give a portion of that to automotive emissions based on, they make up 12% of emissions. So they get 12% of that budget. What do we have to do to actually hit that? And in order to do that, you have to, first of all, have an incredibly aggressive EV adoption scenario, like phasing out gas car production in a few years. But that doesn't get us there because there's too many existing cars on the road for too long. And so if we basically take what's left from that adoption scenario and say we're going to retrofit those cars, then that winds up being the most cost-effective and resource efficient in terms of batteries and whatnot way of achieving that 2C budget. And it works out that we need to retrofit about 500 million cars in order to hit that scenario. There are other ways to hit that scenario. Like we can actually increase the total size of the automotive industry and just be cranking out more cars than we normally do. They all have to be electric. And then we have to, for every extra car we produce, we have to scrap a car that's already on the road prematurely. That comes with a $40 trillion price tag to take that approach. And that dwarfs the Apollo program in terms of relative spending. So I think that's it's a complete non-starter to even have that conversation. But we can actually achieve the same thing by leaning heavily into retrofits. And the nice thing about those retrofits is that there's a capital expenditure, but that capital expenditure pays for itself in fuel savings very quickly.
So back to your company, is your tech fully built out, or do you still have a product roadmap you're using to enhance the tech, so to speak?
Yeah, we still have development to do. Our activities to date in terms of prototyping have been about de-risking, as we talked about earlier, de-risking the kind of weird shit that we're doing in our systems. There's some very novel things we're doing to achieve that vehicle agnosticism. And that super fast and easy installation process. So we've de-risked that. We know that our fundamental approach is going to work. We have to integrate all the systems. We have to do the refinement. We have to do the packaging. And then, of course, we have to do all the commercialization efforts of establishing the supply chain and the vendors and standing up a factory, although we'll probably do a contract manufacturer initially. So there's a lot of work to be done. My whole career has been in the front end of product development, and terrifyingly, I'm coming up on 26, 27 years of doing it. And what we have ahead of us doesn't scare me. Like there's a lot that has to be done, but it's relatively straightforward development. And if a major US or a major auto manufacturer just decided to buy us out tomorrow, they could bring our product to market in a year or two and be manufacturing at scale. There's nothing to stop that from happening in terms of there's no new science needed. There's no crazy engineering challenges that have to be met. It's all relatively straightforward from here on out. Just a lot of work that has to be done.
So Tom, is there anything I should ask you that I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about?
Boy, we've covered a lot, haven't we? I think it's worth drawing a bit of contrast to why the kind of mainstream and previous approaches to retrofitting vehicles hasn't worked, or I shouldn't say hasn't worked, why it hasn't become a mainstream solution. If you look at how that's done, you kind of have two categories. You have either the fully bespoke approach. So I'm not sure if you have a car, what it is, if you have one, but if you were to just take any given car to one of these EV conversion shops and say, I want to convert this to an EV, they'd say, great, okay, we'll start designing a system for your car. We're going to source a bunch of off-the-shelf components, but we have to do a bunch of custom fabrication too. We got to design some brackets. We got to design some couplings, some interfaces. It's going to cost you, $40,000 if you don't want that much range. If you want a lot of range, maybe it's going to be $60,000. If you want it really kind of fancy, maybe you're talking $80,000. So that's sort of the range of what that would take. And it's because of all that, the term is non-recurring engineering that has to happen for that particular vehicle. And then you're going to manufacture some custom parts, and those are going to be one-offs. They're going to be, making just one of a part is extremely expensive. And then that installation process itself is going to take several weeks. So you add up all that labor on the engineering, on the installation. You add up the component costs for those custom components. You add up the off-the-shelf component cost, and that's how you wind up with that $40,000 to $80,000 ballpark. And by the way, that's just an impossible model to scale if you want to be doing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of vehicles. That process just can't scale. There are a few outfits out there that have tried to establish some economies of scale by focusing on one specific vehicle. Like there's a company that does they convert Dodge ProMaster vans into EVs, and so they've got some economies of scale they get by being able to, maybe they can produce 10, 20 parts at a time instead of just one. But I think their retail price is in the $35,000 range. So still your volumes just don't justify investing in the tooling that you need to produce things at low prices. So by being vehicle agnostic within a category, we can invest in that tooling for the manufacturing processes that it takes to produce stuff at a low price. We have massive purchasing power because we're buying lots of the same components over and over again. So that gets our bill of materials costs super low. And then the installation process being fast can take one day because it's very non-invasive. Our system is almost completely self-contained, very little interfacing with the actual vehicle. So that process, you're not spending days and weeks in labor to do the installation. And then by having it be super consistent and simple, we now can use those third parties for installation. So we don't have to build brick and mortar in every market that we want to operate in. We just need to have a training program so that any mechanic anywhere in the world can do these installations. And then, of course, the fact that we're doing plug-in hybrid instead of battery electric means we're using 80% less battery than a full EV conversion would. And that's by far the most expensive component in the system. So really those three things, vehicle agnostic, simple, fast, consistent installation, and plug-in hybrid totally change the paradigm of what a conversion looks like.
So the people retrofitting your system, are they going to be, do they have to be would there be some kind of Blue Dot Motorworks certification system? Mm-hmm. You go to Jason Mechanic at this place, he's certified, but then Tom over here is not certified.
Yeah, exactly. So we are in the process of setting up an arrangement with a company in California that is training independent mechanics to work on electric vehicles. So we're basically going to have a online training program through them that any mechanic, be they part of a franchise, like a Firestone or an NTB or somebody like that, or just, Joe the mechanic or Jill the mechanic from the local shop can do this online program, get certified, and then they become an installer in our network. And if they're the closest one to you, that's where you bring your car, drop it off in the morning, and pick it up in the evening and start using a lot less gas.
So Tom, how can people get in touch with you?
You can do it through our website. We have a portal for sending us emails through the website, which is bluedotmotorworks.com. You can also look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with folks there. Those are probably the best two ways to.
So explain the name Blue Dot Motorworks. Motorworks. So
Blue Dot it's a reference to the pale blue dot photograph, which is a picture of Earth taken from the outer solar system by, I should forget if it was Voyager 1 or Voyager 2. Spacecraft. But this was something that Carl Sagan lobbied for NASA to do, was to turn those spacecraft around and take pictures of the inner solar system from the outer solar system. And there's a picture of Earth that was captured in which Earth is literally less than 1 pixel of blue light in this cosmic background. And Carl Sagan delivers a soliloquy inspired by this photograph about our place in the universe and our relationship with the planet and to each other. And even just thinking about it, I'm getting a little choked up. Every time I listen to it, I get choked up. It just so captures the human condition and our relationship with our planet and each other in a way that nothing else ever really has for me, that I decided to name my company after it.
Nice. I don't think most people realize that we're on this like rock in the middle of nowhere, like rolling, like rotating through space, like really like one piece of rock, literally trillions of rocks everywhere. Just
exactly. Like, it's and not only a rock, but what makes all life possible is the thinnest veneer on top of that rock.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking 6 inches of soil and 10,000 feet of atmosphere, which is the skin of an apple.
Yeah.
That's what makes all life possible, and we are just polluting the shit out of it. It's like pumping rounds into your own life raft. It's unbelievable what we're doing. Yeah.
So before we get out of here, can you give us any advice on wisdom or anything you want to talk about?
Boy, I'm not sure my advice or wisdom is worth anything, but you know, I'd say for me, what makes and you know, this has been a tough road to hoe for sure, doing the startup in a very challenging sector and in a very challenging way. But what makes it worthwhile for me is that it marries what I spend most of my time doing, and most people spend most of their time at their job. It marries that to my values in a very intimate way, and that's an incredibly fulfilling way to go through life. And it makes things that would otherwise be exhausting, it makes them energizing. And so I would say anybody that has the luxury and the ability to do that, to marry those two things together, go for it. You won't regret it.
Tom, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. And remember to be great every day.